Alright, today we will talk about evaluating startup ideas. This is a guidebook for those thinking of starting a startup. Here's the thing. Building a business or a startup is not a simple approach that many people would like to think. There is no cookie cutter approach which you could just follow and arrive where you want to be. Life is not that simple. Nobody knows if a startup idea will succeed, and success doesn't depend on any single thing. But it's useful to stack the decks in your favor early on by starting with a promising idea. But first, let's talk about the common mistakes founders make. Number 1, not solving a real problem. There is a term called SISP in Y-Combinator, solution in search of a problem. This is a challenge often faced by technical founders when they have this technology they want to bring to market, but there is no market and they don't know what type of problem they have to tackle with this solution. They're looking for an application for a new technology. Instead, start with a high quality problem. A problem in a high quality problem space will help you start with a good foundation for your business, because this is where you're going to be positioned in the market. Be passionate about the problem. Be in love with the problem and the people who face these problems, because they are your audience. They are your customers, and they will be your early adopters, playing a huge role in founding your company. See those people as your audience and your business partner, and it will help you a lot. Problem number 2, getting stuck in a torpid idea. What is a torpid idea? It is a widespread problem that loads of people encounter. Common daily life problems. They seem exciting and could be easily solved, but turns out there is a structural reason why it's very difficult to solve, which is why after many years, nobody has solved it. Take social media as an example. Many people say the current algorithm is broken, it's destroying our minds, it's creating short-term attention span, right? And I've met many founders who would love to create the next Facebook, the next Instagram. But have we actually seen a solid competitor and alternative to these existing ones? Some ideas are just way harder to solve than they seem. Number 3, waiting for the perfect startup idea. Analysis paralysis. Thinking about building something is not building that thing. You must get your hands dirty and start working. But the complete opposite of that is not good either. Not evaluating an idea. Number 4. If you don't position yourself in the best possible leverage at the beginning of your journey, you will set yourself to failure. Paul Graham from Y-Combinator once said, "You should think of your initial idea as a good starting point. Startup ideas morph over time." End quote. Think of your idea as a needle pointing you in the right direction, a compass in the forest. It will not become your end product, but it will be your first direction, your first step. Start with an idea with enough interesting qualities that can morph in the right direction. Next up, we'll discuss about the 10 key questions to ask about your startup idea to see if it's the proper idea to work on. Number 1, is there product founder fit? Is the team the right team for tackling the problem? Does the team contain the necessary skills or experience or network? Pick the idea for the team instead of finding the idea in the abstract. When people want to build a company, they often forget that you are that company. The culture of your future startup is the culture between you and your co-founders. And so the problems that you will be best able to solve are the problems that you and your co-founders face on a daily basis. Number 2, how big is the market? There are 2 good markets, those which are big right now and those which are rapidly growing. Pay attention to the times. Pay attention to what people are trending towards, and you will find yourself in a good blue ocean that you could capitalize. Number 3, how acute is the problem? Do people care enough about the problem, right? If the alternative to the problem is literally nothing, there is no existing solutions, or if the existing solutions are very bad, then you have a good problem to capitalize and to solve. Next up, competition. People are afraid of competition, and people say that competitions are for losers. Sure, in the most part. But if you're just starting out, competition is a good sign. If you see a restaurant with a lot of people coming inside and out, you might want to taste. People attract people. But if you're going up against an entrenched competition, you need new insights. You need new, unique selling propositions. You need new leverages. Number 5, do you want this personally? It is very important for a founder to check if the idea they're going towards is something they're passionate about. Do you want this personally or know someone who does? Tackling a problem you experience yourself gives tremendous advantage in terms of understanding your user, because you are the user. Number 6, did this recently become possible or necessary? Was there a trend or a regulatory change that opens up new opportunities? For example, and this is the obvious example, COVID, allowing the rapid growth of work from home tools. Pay attention to the times. Pay attention to what's going on out there in the global stage that might just change the game. Next up, are there good proxies for the business? Proxies are big companies that does a similar thing but isn't a direct competition, which is a validation for your own business. An existing idea in another country or field that validates a need for yours. This is a proxy. A historical example would be Henry Ford. He was inspired by the meat packing houses of Chicago and a grain mill conveyor belt. So he divided his labor by breaking the assembly of the Model T into 84 distinct steps. Each worker was trained to do just one of these steps. That was the birth of the assembly line. Number 8, is this an idea you would want to work on for years? Remember, a startup is not a one-time thing. It is a journey, a long journey. Next up, number 9, is this a scalable business? Software companies usually are. This is why we see them very often. But ideas that require high level of human labor in order to serve the customers is tricky. So keep that in mind. Next, number 10, is this a good idea space? What is an idea space? An idea space is one level of abstraction out of the particular startup idea. It is a class of closely related startup ideas, like food delivery services or medical B2B. Different idea spaces have different success rates. For example, again, starting a social media business would be much harder than starting a B2B SaaS, for example. A good idea space is one that you expect to have a reasonable hit rate for new startup ideas and has founder market fit. So even if the initial idea isn't quite right, there would be the probability of a closely related adjacent idea that you could pivot into. Pick a fertile idea space to increase your likelihood of bumping into the winning idea. So there you have it, the 10 key questions to ask about a startup idea. Next up, here are 3 green flags for an idea. 3 good signs that your startup idea is a winning one. Number 1, it's hard to get started. High boundary to entry is a high boundary to everyone, meaning you will have less competition. Even though, again, competition is a good thing, you don't want too much competition early on. Number 2, it's a boring space. Most founders pick fun ideas over serious, boring, but promising problems. If you browse existing startups, fast-growing startups, you will not find the next social media, the next Airbnb. No, you will actually find boring problems in boring spaces like payroll software or trucking management, right? They are boring, but very much promising because they have a solid industry and people need to solve that problem. Next up, number 3, existing competitors. This is a complementary to number 1. No competitors is a sign that nobody wants the product. A good sign would be a market with existing solutions, but you notice something that they all seem to have missed. This gives you leverage. For example, Dropbox was the 20th company in its space to launch, the 20th company doing online cloud storage, but they have an insight that would later become their competitive advantage. So, how do you come up with startup ideas? You can sit down and intentionally analyze startup ideas, but this generally isn't the best way. The best way is to notice them organically and naturally. 70% of successful Y-Combinator companies are founded organically, Explicit thinking might result in torpid ideas, falling into the same mind games that most founders fall into. So, here are 3 ways to organically obtain startup ideas for future success. Number 1, be an expert on something valuable. Build a skill, a hard skill, something that is in demand in the market, something that most people don't have. Number 2, work at a startup. Jumping firsthand into the world of startups and going under the wings of a mentor will help you tremendously in understanding the dynamics of the world of startups. And lastly, number 3, build things you find interesting. Just start building, especially if you're technical. But even if you're not technical, you could learn how to build. You don't have to have all the knowledge you need to start working. Your personal projects might not stay personal for so long, and you might find people finding your product very much useful in your daily lives, and this is the first step to product market fit. But if you want to start a startup intentionally, how do you do it? Here are 7 recipes for intentionally generating startup ideas. Good startup ideas. Number 1, start with something that your team or you is good at. Think of ideas that take advantage of your own expertise. Again, talking about skill, hard skills. This guarantees product market fit. Number 2, start with a problem you've encountered. Again, if you are your own target audience, you will have a level of empathy that will become your strength and your competitive advantage against your competitors. Find an idea that only you are in the unusual position to see. Perhaps a genuine problem that a lot of people experience, but those people have no skill to solve it. For example, the company Vetco positions itself as the Amazon for veterinarians who don't commonly have the technical expertise to solve their problems. So for the first and second point, think of every job you've had, internships, life experiences. What problems or opportunities you've been in a special position to see. Keep that in mind. Number 3, think of something you personally wish to exist. For example, DoorDash. The founders wished that they could just get their food on time and have any restaurants be able to deliver their food. This is a dangerous recipe. Why? Because the first thing you might think of is not usually something that is insightful. You might lead yourself into a torpid idea because the ideas that most people think about are the ideas that most people aren't able to solve or has a reason structurally why it's very difficult to solve. Again, like the social media problem. So when you try to find something you wish exists, remember to think why your idea hasn't existed yet. Number 4, look for things in the world that have changed recently that might have created a new opportunity. For example, the online meeting platform GatherTown was founded because of COVID. Number 5, look for variants of existing products. For example, Nuvo Cargo, which is Flexport for Latin America, or Baidu, which is the Google for China. Build something that already exists for your own unique local market. There's no shame in replication, as long as it solves problems and creates value. Number 6, talk to people and ask what problem they have. This requires a lot of skill, but this will give you the greatest insight because you're talking to future potential audiences. Pick a fertile idea space, then start talking to people in that space. Talk not only to potential customers, but also founders in that space. For example, the company A2B is Stripe for transportation, modernizing the payment infrastructure for trucking and logistics, where capital movement occurs quickly and transparently. What they did is they pick an idea space, the trucking industry. Since they're not experts in that field, the founders, they turned themselves into one. They went around truck stops and talked to potential users, which are the truckers. They also spoke to other founders about the industry and asked them for their insights. They evaluate several ideas before picking the right one. Number 7, look for big industries that seem broken. Again, don't immediately fall into torpid ideas, into problems that are so hard that you have no chance of solving. Pick realistic ideas in problem spaces you're familiar with that have entrenching problems that hasn't been solved for a long time and solve that problem. A bonus recipe is to find a co-founder with an existing idea, right? Number 8, find a co-founder with an existing idea, then help him or her solve the problem. Bright minds look for opportunities wherever they are. Ray Kroc was not the founder of McDonald's, but he is the man who built this food empire to what it is today. Remember, it's very hard to tell if a startup is going to be successful or not. So sometimes it may be worthwhile to just launch and find out. Founders have a bias to action. So there you have it, the organic and intentional way of generating startup ideas.